It's Wednesday, June 7. In the headlines, Information Minister responds to Integrity Commission's statement. In business news, MSMEs contribute billions yearly in tax revenues. Regionally, visa-free travel to Canada for Trinidad and Tobago nationals. Internationally, World Bank cuts 2024 global growth forecast as rate hikes. And in sports, CONCACAF expands and rebrands Champions League. This is the news on PBC Jamaica. I'm Simone Absalom Gale. Minister without portfolio with responsibility for information, Robert Morgan, gave a response to an Integrity Commission press release dated June 6, 2023. He was speaking at Wednesday's post-cabinet press brief.
The Commission states that this, quote, Communication Minister, the Honorable Nestor Morgan, quote, has also made a number of public remarks concerning the Commission's leadership code of conduct that might have confused the public. I want to state that the public should be aware that at the post-cabinet press briefing on April 19, 2023, a reporter from the RJR Communications Group asked me the question, quote, has the Prime Minister or any member of the Cabinet signed the leadership code of conduct that the Integrity Commission invited the PM and his Cabinet to sign from last year? And if no, can you provide an explanation to why this has not been done? End quote. I responded, quote, I have not been presented with a code of conduct to sign. I have not been consulted, and I am speaking for myself as a duly elected member of Parliament and as a member of the Cabinet.
Minister Morgan says the Commission needs to state whether what he said was not a fact.
The question needs to be answered by the Commission as to whether anything I said in my comments reside far from the facts. I assert that nothing I said is erroneous, as up to this moment at 8:15 on Wednesday, June 7, no code of conduct has been presented to me, nor have I been consulted on a code of conduct. That the Commission has accused me of statements that, in their words, quote, might have confused the public is potentially at least mischievous and might at worst undermine my credibility as the minister with responsibility for information.
He says the fact that the Commission may have engaged the Information Service, he himself was not engaged by the Commission.
In their own release, the Commission has admitted that they, quote, requesting the Prime Minister and Leader of the Opposition should commit to the code on their behalf and on behalf of members of their Cabinet and Shadow Cabinet, respectively. They admit that at no point in their initial correspondence did they indicate that Cabinet ministers should sign the code.
As for claims that special training was administered by the Commission to members of Cabinet and members of the Shadow Cabinet on November 9, 2020 through to February 15, 2021, and again between November 2021 and May 2022.
I wish to state unequivocally, and I challenge the Commission to provide evidence that this Cabinet Minister was invited or received any training from the Commission. This statement, quote, that training has been administered by the Commission to members of the Cabinet and to members of the Shadow Cabinet was done between November 9, 2020 and February 15, 2021, and November 15, 2021 and May 20, 2022, respectively, end quote, is problematic. The public should note that my appointment as Cabinet Minister was on January 10, 2022. This was after such training.
Jamaican farm workers who work abroad will soon be able to voice their issues and complaints without fearing backlash or victimization from their handlers. The Ministry of Labour and Social Security says it will be identifying additional platforms through which farm workers can do so. The change is one of several being eyed after a group of Jamaican farm workers in Ontario, Canada last Thursday issued a distress call to the media about their subpar living and working conditions. Labour Minister Pernell Charles Jr. ordered an immediate investigation and, after receiving a report, says in a social media post made before a statement was issued on Tuesday afternoon, quote, "Urgent meeting had been called with liaison officer for an update on existing issues and activities as part of the thrust to improve delivery of service." End quote. According to the ministry, following all meetings and based on input received, it will make further determinations to implement additional protocols and guidelines to protect the integrity of the farm worker program. The Seasonal Agricultural Farm Worker Program, which began in 1966, is spread across 655 farms in 10 provinces. The Ministry of Health and Wellness says all systems are in place for an adequate response in the event of an earthquake. Director for the Emergency and Disaster Management and Special Services branch of the ministry, Dr. Nicole Dawkins-Wright, told JIS that in the event of an earthquake, quote, "The ministry is charged with and has primary responsibility for the provision of public health services and emergency medical care to victims who may be affected and impacted by an earthquake," end quote. Dr. Dawkins-Wright explained that in regular or routine preparedness activities, the ministry makes provisions for mass casualty incidents and for public health interventions that are required following that catastrophe, depending on the scale of the event. She highlighted that the ministry has made provisions for the management of up to 100 victims. She says, quote, "In excess of that, it is highly likely that we would need to mobilize international support, and so we have a mechanism in place to bring in persons to enhance our capacity," end quote. Today, June 7, 2023, is World Food Safety Day. It's recognized to draw attention to food standards. Foodborne diseases affect 1 in 10 people worldwide each year. How do you define safe food? The World Health Organization has the answer.
What is safe food? Food is safe when it is not contaminated with dangerous substances or germs that can make people sick, like different microbes, pesticides, and residues of veterinary drugs or glass or stones. Farmers, food producers, and vendors help keep our food safe, all the way. And what should you do at home? Let's see some examples. Wash your hands properly with soap before and often during food preparation. Thaw food in the refrigerator or in cold water, as microbes can multiply very quickly. Don't wash raw poultry and other meats. Washing doesn't remove microbes and can even spread them to hands, surfaces, utensils, or other food. Don't eat food that dropped on the floor, as slightest contact with microbes can transfer them to it. When food is safe, you are healthy. Food safety is in your hands.
Time now for the Business Report with Danita Rodney.
The government earns more than $200 billion per year in revenues from micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, MSMEs. This from Dwayne Haynes, Director in charge of Technical Coordination and Monitoring in the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce, who also says up to the third quarter of 2022, MSMEs accounted for 44% of local gross domestic product.
At the end of September 2022, it's estimated that there are over 400,000 MSMEs operating in Jamaica. MSMEs contribute to 44% of GDP. MSME sales account for 13.4% of government revenue, or $220 billion in taxes to the government. MSME actors account for 15% of Jamaica's total population and accounts for 34% of Jamaica's labor force.
For your market updates, in foreign exchange trading for Tuesday, June 6, the US dollar sold for an average of $155.62. The Canadian dollar ended trading at $115.69. The pound sterling traded for $193.36, and the euro sold for an average of $168.73. In GSE trading, the GSE index advanced by 866 points. The junior market index advanced by 46 points. The combined market index advanced by 1,237 points, and the All Jamaican Composite Index advanced by 1,720 points. Overall market activity resulted from trading in 108 stocks, of which 48 advanced, 39 declined, and 21 traded firm. Stocks advanced for 138 Student Living Jamaica Limited, Barita Investments Limited, and Blue Power Group Limited. Stocks declined for 138 Student Living Jamaica Limited, Verbal Preference, Access Financial Services Limited, and Berger Paints Jamaica Limited. Trading firm were Caribbean Producers Jamaica Limited, Siboney Group Limited, and Community and Workers of Jamaica CCU Deferred Share. The overall volume leaders were Wigton Wind Farm Limited Ordinary Shares with over 2 million units, Trans-Jamaican Highway Limited, and Sagicor Select Funds Limited Financial with over 1 million units. In regional stocks, in Trinidad and Tobago, Calypso Macro Index Fund posted 124 shares. On the Barbados Stock Exchange, Cave Shepherd and Company Limited was the volume leader with 1,000 shares. They were followed by First Caribbean International Bank and Emera Deposit Receipt, which traded 45 and 3 shares respectively. In regional business, the Caribbean Telecommunications Union, CTU, is showing support for moves to introduce a complementary currency aimed at addressing the challenges of cross-border currency payments across Barbados and the region.
So it's designed to support trade between businesses within the Caribbean. The second thing is, if you want to do trade now, you need a correspondent bank. They're de-risking, so they're leaving the region. There's no risk of Carib dollar leaving the region because it's bound to be in the region. It's made for the region. So we tackle the second problem as well. And the third is a lot of MSMEs, micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises don't even have access to banking. And this is something we can change as well. We work together with payment service providers, which are already active in the region, and use their reach out to give access to Carib dollars.
We encourage the policymakers in the region to attend to understand, because you mentioned, for example, crypto. And it is important to understand that this is different from, say, Bitcoin or any cryptocurrency that's currently out there. How is it different? We need to be able to build awareness around that and educate and explain the safeguards that are in place. And from our point of view, that is why we are providing the platform. I mean, CaribCoin is a private company. It is a member of the CTU. We don't have any stake in the company, but certainly we understand the value of the product that they're trying to implement in the Caribbean and how it can help to drive our own agenda in terms of digital transformation.
In international business, U.S. stocks closed up as investors awaited inflation data and the Federal Reserve's policy meet next week.
U.S. stocks gained ground Tuesday, helped by some advances in economically sensitive sectors. The Dow closed up a hair, while the S&P 500 added 0.25%, and the Nasdaq added about 0.4. Other areas of the market fared better, which is a positive sign, according to Fiduciary Trust Company Chief Investment Officer Hans Olsen.
The large cap section of the market is not moving very much today. The small cap is moving quite nicely, and it looks like financials are starting to catch a bit as well. That's pretty important, because if we're going to see this market rally that we've had over the last several months sustain itself, it's really important that the market participation broaden out materially, which it hasn't done to date. So hopefully today is a harbinger of things to come. Not really sure that that's the case, but it's a good data point.
Recent economic data and dovish remarks from Fed officials have raised the odds of the Fed leaving interest rates unchanged at its June 13 to 14 meeting to about 80%. Stocks on the move included Coinbase Global, which plunged 12% after the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission sued the crypto exchange, accusing it of illegally operating without having first registered with the regulator. And Advanced Micro Devices, which rose 5% after broker Piper Sandler raised its price target on the stock to $150, the second highest on Wall Street, according to Refinitiv data.
In market data for oil prices edged higher as Saudi Arabia's surprise weekend pledge to deepen output cuts outweighed weak Chinese export data and rising U.S. fuel stocks. Brent crude futures were up 36 cents at $76.65, while West Texas Intermediate crude futures gained 37 cents to $72.11 a barrel. And that was the business report on PBCJ. I'm Danita Rodney.
In regional news, Trinidad and Tobago has been added to a list of 13 countries that now qualify for visa-free travel to Canada.
Canada's Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship, Sean Fraser, announced the addition of 13 countries to the Electronic Travel Authorization, or ETA, program. Effective today, travelers from the 13 countries who have either held a Canadian visa in the last 10 years or who currently hold a valid United States non-immigrant visa can now apply for an ETA instead of a visa when traveling to Canada by air. Trinidad and Tobago, Antigua and Barbuda, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia and St. Vincent and the Grenadines now qualify for the ETA program. Minister Fraser says introducing visa-free air travel diverts thousands of applications from Canada's visa caseload, allowing visa applications to be processed more efficiently.
Guyana on Tuesday secured a seat on the United Nations Security Council and will serve as a non-permanent member on the International Peace and Security Body for the 2024-2025 term. More from Newsroom Guyana.
For several years, Guyana has eyed a seat on the United Nations Security Council after last occupying the position in the 1980s. Finally, on Tuesday, the country received 191 votes out of a possible 192 votes, effectively clinching one of the 5 available non-permanent seats on the 15-member council. This was the moment the results came in.
Guyana, 191.
From January 1, 2024, for a period of 2 years, Guyana will represent the Latin American Caribbean bloc on the Council. The other states elected are Algeria, the Republic of Korea, Sierra Leone, and Slovenia. Belarus failed in its bid to secure a seat for the Eastern Europe bloc. That seat went to Slovenia. These countries are all non-permanent members who will serve a 2-year term. China, France, Russia, the United Kingdom, and the United States of America are the 5 permanent members of the Council. After Guyana was elected, President Dr. Irfan Ali promised that the country would be a constructive and engaged partner. In a statement, he said, quote, "We intend to be a constructive and engaged partner with the members of the Council and the wider international community in the search for solutions to the myriad of momentous challenges that beset our human family," unquote. He also noted that Guyana will assume this responsibility with utmost seriousness and dedication, mindful of the complex and challenging times in which we live. Meanwhile, the country's Foreign Affairs Minister Hugh Todd, who was part of Tuesday's proceedings, said Guyana is keen on helping to tackle global problems.
The international security landscape today is extremely complex. Threats to global security and rising crises are proliferating. These challenges must be carefully managed through adherence to international law, trust building, and dialogue. In addressing them, Guyana will work with all Council members and the wider United Nations to contribute useful ideas and encourage partnership. In this family of nations, we each have diverse experiences and strengths and can bring these to bear in securing our common future.
A regional conference that focuses on agriculture is being held in the Bahamas, with the goal being to educate and facilitate discussions on a growing industry that is gaining traction in the Caribbean. Joshua Williams reports.
The 34th West Indies Agricultural Economics Conference has kicked off at the Breezes Resort. It takes a look at agricultural policies and systems, as well as focuses on the economic problems. And that's not all. It also facilitates the exchange of ideas. Prime Minister Philip Davis gave the keynote address.
Agriculture, as a backbone of our Caribbean economies, holds immense significance. It represents the intricate tapestry of our cultures, traditions, and heritage. The conference serves as a crucial platform to underscore the pivotal role of agriculture in addressing the challenges we face today.
The conferences are normally held every 2 years, but was thrown off schedule due to the COVID-19 pandemic. President of the Caribbean Agroeconomic Society, Dr. Kyle Pemberton, says the society is pleased to be in the Bahamas for this year's conference.
Our distinguished member of our executive and the mistress of ceremonies here, Senator Dr. Erisia Hepburn-Forbes, she insisted that we should have this conference here in the Bahamas. She, of course, wanted it to be held at BAMC in Andros, but the logistics did not permit that. We even thought of having it in Grand Bahama.
This year's meetings marks the second time the Bahamas is hosting the event and the first time BAMC is serving as a co-host. Agriculture Minister Clay Sweeting says the conference falls in line with government's plan to ensure food security.
It is fitting that this is occurring during the Bahamas' 50th year of independence. Your theme, emerging challenges and opportunities for food systems, climate change, and tourism nexus, is also very fitting as it reflects the Bahamas government's commitment to achieve food security.
Reporting for our news, I'm Joshua Williams.
In international news, twice a year, the World Bank releases a report on the state of the global economy and its predictions for growth. Tuesday's report shows that 2/3 of developing economies will see lower growth in the second half of this year than in 2022, dealing a major setback to post-pandemic recovery. Al Jazeera's Patty Colin has the details.
As the pandemic hit in 2020, small businesses like this nail salon in Washington, D.C. were forced to shut down. They hoped temporarily, not knowing if they would make it through. Looking around D.C. streets, it's clear to see how many did not. But for Amanda Moreno, relief. They made it, and her business is busy again. But now the question, with so much talk of a pending recession, will it last?
And so when you ask me, are we nervous about the economy? Of course we are, but there is only so much that we can control. And right now, the only thing that we can control is to continue to provide our clients with experience that allows them to relax and forget a little bit about the crazy world out there.
It's a global issue hanging over all economies, both rich and poor. And in its report, the World Bank says there is no sign of a quick turnaround anytime soon. So here's what the World Bank predicts as far as global growth. They said last year it was 3.1%, and they said that this year it's going to go down a full percentage point to 2.1% and only slightly rebound in the following year in 2024, just 2.4%. Their reasons, continued issues around the pandemic, Russia's war in Ukraine, slower than expected growth in China, and worldwide inflation. And as the Federal Reserve and other central banks raise interest rates to combat it, the developing countries are paying the steepest price because it costs a lot more now to borrow money.
So this higher debt payments eating up what needs to be used for health and education in these developing economies, especially these low-income countries.
A forecast not just of lower growth numbers, but for what it actually means. The poorest in the world suffering even more in the years ahead. Patty Culhane, Al Jazeera, Washington.
In sports, CONCACAF on Tuesday announced a rebranded flagship men's club tournament, the CONCACAF Champions Cup. Beginning with the 2024 edition, the CONCACAF Champions Cup will replace the Champions League as the premier men's continental tournament, which crowns the club champion of the region and provides the qualification route to the new and expanded FIFA Club World Cup. The new expanded tournament will include 27 clubs and 51 matches and will see the triumphant team walking away with US $5 million and a majestic trophy. The West Indies registered their second win in as many matches against the United Arab Emirates in Sharjah.
Batting first, the men in maroon scored a commanding 306 all-out in 49.5 overs. Once more, the opening partnership of Brandon King and Johnson Charles provided a solid foundation of 129 before Charles fell for 63. Brandon King fell shortly after for 64. Late order contributions of 37 from Odin Smith and 26 from Kavim Hodge provided a late flow of runs. Zahoor Khan was the pick of the bowlers for the UAE with 3 wickets for 44 runs. The West Indies immediately set the hosts on the back foot at 15 for 1, which eventually led to 95 for 5. However, an 80-run partnership between Basil Hamid and Ali Nasir prolonged the Windies' victory. Roston Chase and Kavim Hodge each took 2 wickets as the UAE closed their innings on a respectable 228 for 7 from 50 overs, handing the West Indies victory by 78 runs and to take the 3-match ODI series 2-0. It's been a while since I said that.
And that's the news on PBCJ. Remember, you can follow us on our social media platform at PBCJamaica. Thank you so much for watching.